Hello, I'm Nazia Rizwan, speech and language therapist in Greenwich, Oxleas NHS Foundation Trust.
And I'm Paula Parr, also working in Oxleas NHS Foundation Trust as a speech and language therapist.
We're here to talk to you about how we began the conversation around diversity, inclusion and anti-racism. So we thought we'd share with you how we began that conversation with our wider team and some reflections on how it went. So to begin around thinking about how to have the conversation, I thought it would be nice to have this organised as part of our general team meetings that we have. So these are whole day, well, rather half day events that we have once a term. And so I included it within the end of that session. So I thought rather than spending a whole day, which might be slightly too intense or it being too short so that you couldn't cover enough content, I thought 40 minutes was a good amount of time interspersed within our general whole service team meeting anyway. So this consisted of a 25-minute presentation with a 15-minute breakout activity. Remembering during, remote working times, this all happened via MS Teams. In preparation for the meeting, I also circulated some reading materials. So this consisted of an essay around white privilege, and the essay and the content was all gathered from the RCSLT website. So there wasn't much research I had to do myself. Thankfully, the RCSLT has a diversity section, which has lots of really nice resources to help you plan having discussions. So in terms of the delivery, it was a 25-minute presentation. The first 5 minutes or so consisted of updating the team around what the RCSLT were doing. And then I thought a good starting point was to introduce the concept of the anti-racism model, which I'll show you in the following slide. And I thought the main aim of the presentation wasn't necessarily about covering lots of new material or talking in depth around different issues relating to racism, but rather about talking about the importance of beginning the conversation and how just talking about it can be difficult. So that was actually the main bulk of the conversation, with the breakout activity focusing on the topic of white privilege. So what did this look like? Here's an example of one of the slides I shared. So the reference is there at the bottom. And I showed this because I thought this was a really nice visual representation of demonstrating what our overall aim is around becoming actively anti-racist. So moving from being in the fear zone through to the learning zone and then into the growth zone, which is around being able to sit with your discomfort. So this was quite an important slide, and it was one that I referred to back towards the end of the presentation. I then spoke about the importance of beginning the conversation and how it can be uncomfortable. So again, when this is the first time you're talking about it, I think it's really important that you do spend a good 5 to 10 minutes just talking about the nature of having these kind of conversations. And particularly emphasizing that sometimes people may avoid things because they don't want to feel uncomfortable, or they may worry, they may inadvertently offend. However, by not having a conversation, you may be contributing to the problem. Now, it's still hard to have these conversations. So then I introduced this slide, which is just talking about how you can address the uncomfortableness. So the aim behind this was just to help people prepare around talking about these issues, particularly when we then went into the breakout groups. So it was around acknowledging that it can be uncomfortable, sharing your feelings and asking others. In addition, I also emphasized some general ground rules during the breakout discussion. So these were things around listening to each other without judgment, respecting each other's contributions, not pressurizing anyone into sharing anything they didn't want to, and listening openly and honestly, so that ultimately we can be uncomfortable together. The breakout activity, it consisted of a small group discussions where people read the essay called Unpacking the Knapsack. Again, this is found on the RCSLT website. And there wasn't any set questions that I had for the breakout activity. It was just a really nice way for people to reflect on either what they'd read or some of the conversations that I had around introducing what white privilege is, some of the definitions around it, or indeed just how they felt around beginning the conversations. So that in total took around 45 minutes or so, about 40 minutes. And yeah, now we'll just talk a little bit around how it went.
Thank you, Nazia. That was, I asked you earlier on how you felt about doing this for our whole department. And yeah, do you want to sort of tell us a bit more about what it felt like doing it?
I felt, I did feel nervous because again, it's something which we don't openly talk about, although we know it's been on everyone's mind, especially this year, given the Black Lives Matter movement. I think for myself personally, I wasn't that kind of nervous around the content or what to include, because these were conversations which I've had quite a lot within my peer group, on social media, with lots of people outside of the workplace. But one of the main issues I was concerned about in the workplace was how it would come across, especially as one of the senior leaders. And I was thinking more around how I might be perceived, or just how it would come across. So that was more the nerves. But on the plus side, because it was all on Teams, the remote working nature on it meant that I couldn't physically see everyone. Everyone was behind the screen, so I could feel detached from everyone else. So that made it slightly easier for me to deliver it.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I thought it came across really, really well. And I think a lot of people are passionate about this. And one of the conversations we had earlier was, I'm grew up in the 80s where racism was much more obvious, openly obvious, and was deeply, deeply, deeply upset by it at the time. And so now roll on 40 odd years, and to me it's just heartbreaking that we have moved forward a little, but it is still there. So I'm really, really it's great that you're doing this. It's great that you're pushing it forward. And I think probably compared to the 80s, where maybe I felt I talked a lot more about it, it has become an uncomfortable thing. So I thought you introduced it really well. And I love that lovely diagram about that, where we are on the pathway. And I suppose the emotion it engenders in me is a kind of feelings of, I suppose, guilt and sadness that it has not gone away. And when I look at myself even on that, yes, I am massively aware, but I'm not completely aware of all the things that go on. I'm not, so you opened up our eyes, and that was really good. And then how did you find, so then we went into small groups, didn't we, Nazia?
Yeah. One of the reflections I had actually was from talking to some of the people that were in different groups. So again, everything was confidential. There was no need for anyone to share, but naturally, some of the conversations in the workplace in the weeks afterwards, I had lots of really nice feedback from people around the team saying how they really enjoyed it and they would love this to be included in following meetings. Again, as I'm sure with everyone else, all your meetings might be quite operational heavy. There might be lots of processing and things to follow, but it's really important to have sections where you are reflecting on yourself. And so I think overwhelmingly people did feedback saying that they really enjoyed having these discussions, because without it they wouldn't have known how to begin the conversation. So because I allowed them that kind of freedom to say it's okay to talk about it, it was like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders, and they thought, oh yes, I can talk about it and it won't come across as awkward. So that was quite nice.
It is. And I have to say, Nazia, we were supposed to be meeting today for a quick 10 minutes to record this. We've probably been talking for about an hour. And my word, we both really explored our feelings and our emotions about it. And I've talked to you at a level that I would never have talked to you if you hadn't opened this door. And that's really special. That's really important. I thought in our group, it was very interesting. One of the members in our group was actually really shocked. She was almost in tears, actually, wasn't she? She said, I had no idea. I was shocked that she had no idea, but I was also so sad. In fact, I contacted her afterwards because she was so upset, and she was upset on your behalf and one of the other ladies in our group as well. I don't know what you thought about that. Did that surprise you? Or
that did surprise me, but in a way it didn't, because I think this is why it's so important when you do begin this conversation that you do explain that this can be quite emotive and there are going to be lots of emotions and feelings shared. And when we go back to that anti-racist model, they do talk about going through those different zones and how through each phase you may feel different emotions, and that's reflected within our diverse workforce in terms of where each person are in that stage. So the stage you are at, Paula, is quite different to our colleagues. But it's about recognizing that we are all on that same journey, and so we've got to support each other through whichever zone they're currently at. So if we're summarising, maybe if we've just got another minute or so, what would you say would be your main kind of messages for people out there who do want to begin the conversation, but they're quite nervous or they're not quite sure how to do it? I guess for me, it would be just go for it.
I guess for me, it's having a champion. So I feel you've been our champion, Nazia. You've got that conversation going. And now I think it's right. We were talking about it earlier. It'd be nice if other people can keep it going, because you said to me, you don't want to be the only one. Otherwise, it's not really what's happening, is it? So I think we just keep it doing. We keep it in our staff meetings, keep it on the discussion, keep people talking. And it can only make people more aware, more understanding. And that is the way change happens. And what do we want? We want change, don't we? We want things to change.
Okay, right, on that note, I think we'll leave it at that. So thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy having these conversations. It may be difficult, but it's really important that we do it. Thank you.